Where's everyone now? It's 5 minutes to class time. They are still enjoying their Sunday rice. So I'll give 5 more minutes for everyone for more people to join. 5 more minutes. So we'll start by 5:05. Please call your classmates, call all of them, let them join. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good evening,
Okay.
welcome.
Good evening. Thank you.
Hi, Charlie, are you there? I think it's 5. You can start. Okay, I think Charlie is probably having a bit of a challenge with Okay, you're back. All right.
She gave 5 minutes for them to join in, so we are waiting for them. And the attendance is very poor this evening. So party chairpersons, please encourage your members to join into class. Okay, this is 17:05 and it's time for class. Our topic today is collation of election results by our facilitator, Miss Amina Miango. So I'm just going to go through her bio before she comes up and continues. Okay, Amina Miango is a Nigerian trained lawyer, researcher, and trainer with over 9 years experience working in election management and administration. Her research cuts across the electoral process, electoral legal framework, electoral dispute resolutions, human rights, and compliance. She's passionate about free and fair and credible elections and believes the sound knowledge of electoral practices by citizens is a first step towards achieving that. She's a strong believer in the rule of law as a tool of justice and equality. So, ladies and gentlemen, with a great welcome, we'd like to welcome our facilitator, Zamina Miango. Welcome, ma.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Hope all of you can hear me.
Yes, ma, we can hear you. Welcome, ma.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hope, can you see my slides? I'm sharing my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma, we can see it.
Okay, great. So without wasting much time, I know all of us have things. My Sunday evenings are not the best time for any class because, it's Sunday evening. People want to do other things, but we'll make do with it and try and get it done. So before we start, I'm sure a lot of us have participated in elections, local government elections. We just completed one election in March. That's the general elections. Presidential election was in February, then governorship and State House of Assembly was in March. And I'm sure some of us participated either by voting or by campaigning or generally just talking about it. All of us are aware that elections happened. Now, like every other activity, election comes in a circle. Sorry, I'm sitting outside, so you may be hearing voices. This is the most comfortable place. I'm out of my station, so this is the most comfortable place I can sit and have this class. So I apologize if you get some noise seeps through. So collation of election results. Before you understand what collation of election results is, even though I know some of us already know what it is, we need to understand that collation is a subset, an activity on election day. Yeah. So an election day is part of a circle, basically. When you talk about election, it is not just a one-off event. It is not just that voting, going to vote, going to cast your vote, or, it encompasses a whole lot of things. And because election is a continuous process, it is referred to as the electoral cycle, which has a lot of activities embedded. But because of the volume of activities and volume of things involved, the cycle is divided into three: the pre-election, the electoral period, and then the post-election. The pre-electoral period basically deals with things like budgeting, logistics and security, procurement, training of electoral staff, registration, voter registration, and all that. Then, please, can you reduce your voice? Please, reduce your voice, please. Sorry, guys. The electoral period has to do with that's the elections proper. The electoral period where elections proper take place. But it's not just elections that take place during the electoral period, because we have nomination of candidates, which happened before the election day. We also have campaigns. I'm sure some of us participated in campaigns. I'm just trying to lay a foundation. I don't want to jump into collation of results and then get it done. You need to understand that elections doesn't just exist on its own, yeah? That it's part of a process. So we have, during the electoral period, we have voting, which collation of results, and complaints, and all that. Now, then you have the post-electoral period. Under this period, you review the elections that you've had, then you carry out reforms, electoral reforms. So this period, this is a time that the National Assembly, INEC, and other stakeholders will look at the laws, electoral laws, and say, okay, during the last election, this particular law fell short of the the general principles of the democracy and fair play. So let's see if we can review it. Yeah. So strategize for next election, and all that. So reforms, reviews, they all come after the post-electoral period. I don't know if you were given this slide, but if you were not, Wumi will probably share it after the class. So basically, that's the electoral cycle. So when you are asked, you know that election does not just fall, doesn't just happen. You get, it's a whole lot of things. Now, when I'm teaching a class, I do not like just jumping into my topic because, first of all, collation is not such a broad subject, even though it's very technical and very important. It's not just it's straightforward, yeah? And then you can't talk about elections or collation or all those things without understanding the laws. First of all, I'm a lawyer, so I like people understanding the laws. And then election is a legal process. Even though political scientists want to kill me when I say this, but it's basically a legal process because it is from you cannot see my slides. You can't see my slide.
Mine is not projected.
Oh.
Part of who she is. It doesn't seem forced. She
Sorry. I thought I asked and I was told that you could see my slides. Maybe it stopped sharing. What about now?
No, we can see, but it's not projected.
On the third day, leaving nothing for him to imagine.
Projected how?
Like it's showing the whole work.
Oh,
and it's far. Yes.
He imagines seeing her in it.
Okay.
On the second page, she invites him.
How I can rectify that. I don't know how to rectify that too. Maybe Wumi, if you are here, if you can help me. Okay, Wumi's hands are up. Maybe if you can help me.
Good afternoon, ma. You can just click on slideshow. It's above those 3 alphabets. Yeah, it will become full screen. Those three
What
A's.
alphabet?
Those 3 A's. Just no. Where you were before?
Where was I? Hold on.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Slideshow up, just above them, where those 3 A's are. Just above.
I cannot
just
see
above.
anything slideshow here.
Just above the 3 alphabet. Yes.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yes. So just play it from current. Play from current slide.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay.
It's supposed to come up. What's happening?
Can you see it? Because it's up on my own screen.
Oh no, yeah, it's still showing like it was.
Another one.
Yes.
Okay, I think there is a play at the tax bar.
Yeah, she said it's already playing on her own end.
Hold on. Let me stop, then share again.
Okay.
Let's see what happens.
Yes, it's showing fully now.
It's showing now, yeah?
Yes, please.
Okay. So let me go back to where I Okay, so I'm sure we can see it now, yeah? I don't know what's happening.
It's not showing as the previous. It's not showing.
To resume sharing. It's refusing to
But
resume.
anyway, it's still readable this way. So maybe we could just go ahead.
Anyway, I'll
Yes, it's up now.
Okay, so like I was saying, I like to delve into the laws, because election is a legal process. It is provided by law, even though political scientists will disagree with this. But for me, if if there's a law guiding a process that says you must do this, so it makes it, first of all, a legal process before whatever else. So what does the law say about elections? The whole election, the whole laws guide the election. Most times we refer to it as the electoral legal framework. It basically encompasses all the laws that provide for elections. And as Nigerians, when you're looking at a legal framework for anything, the first document you look at is the Constitution. And for elections, it is no different. The Constitution, the 1999 Constitution as amended, provides for the whole process of election. It establishes INEC, it provides for what INEC does. INEC shall conduct elections, INEC shall register political parties, INEC shall do this, INEC shall do that. So when you talk of elections, the first document you look at is the Constitution 1999 as amended. It is the document through which every other law in Nigeria derives its powers. Now, please, can you, excuse me, sir, please, can you reduce your voice? Sorry, sir. No, I'm not saying you shouldn't sit down. I'm just saying, please, can you reduce? I'm teaching a class. No, you can talk. So, as I was saying, apologies about that. When the Constitution is the main document that deals with everything, basically, it provides for powers, it provides for everything. And then it is from that Constitution also that the National Assembly derives its powers to make other laws. It is also from that Constitution that the INEC derives its powers to, first of all, conduct elections, and then secondly, to make regulations. So when you're talking about electoral legal framework, you can't actually do without the Constitution. The Constitution must feature, because without the Constitution, all these other laws will not exist. So the next document, in the hierarchy of documents, the next document you talk about is the Electoral Act 2022. Before now, we had the Electoral Act 2010. Before the Electoral Act 2010, we had the Electoral Act 2006, and like that, and like that, and like that. So the Electoral Act, the Constitution basically just says INEC shall, have power to conduct elections, and then INEC shall have power to register political parties, and all of that. Now, the Electoral Act goes forward, and breaks down those powers of INEC. The Constitution didn't say this is when, this is how INEC will register political parties. It didn't say, okay, this is the time period through which INEC will register political parties. It just said INEC should register political parties. INEC should conduct elections. Now the Electoral Act now goes forward and says, this is the time in which you will conduct the elections. This is this is how you will do the elections. And then for the registration of political parties, it says this is the time limit which you register political parties. This is how you will register political parties. Yeah. So the Electoral Act basically breaks down further the powers of INEC under the Constitution, provides for some of the, for how to go about them. Now, like the Constitution, the Electoral Act too is not very explicit. For example, in registering political parties, it doesn't say, okay, INEC can, charge maybe for administrative purposes of, ask the people to pay some money and all that. Now, and then it doesn't say, let me use one section, for example, in the Electoral Act. The Electoral Act 2022, there's a section that says that INEC can transmit results in any manner it deems fit, yeah? And that INEC can use any process it deems fit for voting. Now, that is where the Electoral Act stopped. It didn't say, okay, you have to use BVAS all the time, or you have to use smart card reader. It just says, and any other technological device. So at any time, there's an opening, and that opening, it could be that INEC decide that, okay, we're no longer using BVAS for, say, the 2027 elections. We want to use another device. And the Electoral Act states, and any other technological device, yeah? INEC would now under the power it derives from the Constitution to make regulations, will now make a regulation and say, okay, we want to start using device B for elections. And then all these things will now be contained in the regulations. So where the Electoral Act and the Constitution are silent, INEC regulations further breaks down all the processes. INEC doesn't, this is not the only regulation that INEC has. There are regulations for registration of political parties. There are regulations for voting of IDPs. There are regulations, all kinds of regulations. All these regulations form part of the regulations that INEC make, derived from the powers they get from the Constitution. Now, in all of this, any of these three laws, the most powerful, like I said earlier on, is the Constitution. And the Electoral Act, the INEC regulations, all of them get their validity from the Constitution. So in a situation whereby anything in the Electoral Act and anything in the regulations is contrary to what the Constitution says, yeah, it becomes null and void. Let me give you an example. I usually hear people say, why can't we do away with, why do we need to use permanent voters card, to vote? It's simple, because the constitutional provision, the Constitution says you should carry a voters card, yeah, to the polling unit on election day to vote. So because it is there, you have to do it. So unless we amend that part of the Constitution that says that, we can't actually stop using them. So basically, when you hear about electoral legal framework, this is basically what it is. So let's go back to collation. No, not collation proper. Sorry. Honestly, this you people's what they call it. Okay. So collation. Before we do a collation, I think we should look at, sorry. Okay, let's look at collation is an electoral day activity, like I don't know how many times since this class began. Now, the thing with collation is I see collation as probably one of the most important aspects of electoral day activity, because it is capable of impugning on the credibility and integrity of elections. When we say integrity of elections, or integrity of election basically means that any election that is based on democratic principles of universal suffrage and political equality, as reflected in a number of electoral laws. This is the definition given by Kofi Annan. And how important is electoral integrity in the electoral process? Every electoral process, every electoral activity actually must, as a matter of fact, must have high integrity, because where there's no integrity in any part of the process, whether during voting or during collation or even during registration of voters, you tend to have a problem. And I always say that the 2023 elections, it's not like it was terrible, because at least we saw governors, we saw people that, have held power for a long time. We saw them lose their elections. So the election wasn't terrible. It just suffered from credibility issues. And where there is credibility problem in an election, you basically cannot say the election was free and fair, because it suffers from credibility issue. And that was the problem of the 2023 election. Yeah. And to date, I'm sure till in another 10 years, we'll keep talking about the election as one of some people will say it is the worst election that we've ever had. But is it though? Is it? I think the problem was the fact that there were a lot of credibility issues. And it was during collation that all these issues started. That is why collation is important in your journey of political literacy. You need to understand the issues around collation. You need to understand the process. It is only when you understand the process that you can now comfortably analyze any situation where collation occurred. From my slide, I say collation is an important aspect of election day administration, if not the most important. Like I said, I feel like it's probably the most important, because you can get voting right, you can get everything right, and then it comes to collation and everything becomes a problem. We saw it in the 2023 election. Everybody was impressed, mostly impressed with beavers. When people talk, they'll be like, oh no, we don't have a problem with beavers, yeah? It was when collation and transmission came in that the problem started arising, yeah? So a well-managed electoral process can be compromised where collation is not handled properly. Where collation is not done transparently and accurately, the credibility of the process will be questioned, leading to rejection of the results by stakeholders. We saw that happen. And this part of my slide is not new. It's not new at all. Collation is the tabulation or summation of votes cast at an election. That's what collation is. You calculate what party A got from one level to another level to another level until you get the final result. That's basically what collation is. Let me see what's happening in the chat box. Whether there are questions or disagreements. Okay, so let me continue. So that's basically what collation is. Now, I mentioned earlier on that that during in the last election, that before we used to use the 2010 Electoral Act before we got the 2022 Electoral Act. I'll come back to that slide later. So we're talking about collation now. So now, I mentioned that there are levels of collation, collation of results. And depending on the election, depending on the type of election, whether it's presidential, whether it's governorship, whether it's National Assembly or State House of Assembly, the level will start somewhere and end somewhere. That's how it is. And like I said earlier, it's basically the computation, the summation of votes cast for every candidate that is contesting that election. That's what collation is. And you cannot do collation without transmission because they go hand in hand. You collate, you transmit to the next level, you collate to transmit to the next level. That's basically how it works. So I'm going to use the governorship, the presidential elections, and maybe the senatorial district election so that I don't confuse you. And like I said earlier on, collation is very technical, very, very technical, because if I start running through each of the levels, you may jumble it up. So let me use, let me use the area council elections. Before I go forward, how many electoral management bodies do we have in Nigeria? If you know the answer, just type it in the chat box. How many EMBs, electoral management bodies, do we have in Nigeria? You know the answer, just type it in. Let's see. No one? No answer? No answer? Okay, Ayomide said 3, of course. Ekomobong said 2. Anyone else? So Oyegoke said 3. Okay. Moses Joseph said 3. Okay, so thank you for your answers, but you're wrong. We do not have 3 election management bodies in Nigeria. An election management body is basically INEC, and plus X, basically. So we have 37. We have 37. We have 37 electoral management bodies when you count 1 for each state, and then plus INEC. We have 36 states plus INEC. So we have 37 electoral management bodies in Nigeria. Basically, INEC conducts elections for area councils in Abuja. Area councils in Abuja are basically local government areas in the FCT. In the FCT, sorry, not Abuja, because Abuja is in the FCT. It's complicated. And then the remaining 36 conduct local government elections in their various subnational areas. So we have 37 electoral management bodies. Don't forget. So when it comes to area council elections, like I say, I'm basically concentrating on the elections that are conducted by INEC because that's mostly my where I do most of the work, and because INEC basically does all the elections, including area council elections for the FCT. So in an election, for example, for area council, for position of councillor, now, before if we remember maybe from our previous classes or from our reading or from even practice, councillors basically are lawmakers for the local, representing wards, at the local government level. So for election into RAs, that's registration areas, or wards, as it is also popularly known. If it's for position of councillor, basically under the registration area or ward, maybe you have like 10, let's say you have 60 polling units under that registration area. How are results collated for that level, for election into councillor? It's basic. When you are done voting at polling units and then ballot papers are sorted and counted, and each party is giving their what do you call it, their scores. The scores are written in a sheet referred to as the result sheet. Now, once that is done, the original copy of that result sheet is taken to the next level, which from the polling unit area will be the registration area or the ward collation. And for an election into councillorship, that's where collation will end. You just compile results from all the polling units under that registration area. You compute it according to political parties, of course. Remember, in Nigeria, we do not have independent candidacy. So everybody contesting for an election in Nigeria must do so under a political party. So you compile the results from all the polling units under that registration area. You put them according to political parties, and then you declare and return the winner. For councillorship, it's basic because it's just from polling units to RA. Now, during general elections, where there are multiple elections, governorship, presidential, National Assembly, State House of Assembly, they all fall on different days. Sorry, they all fall on different days, like we know. Presidential and National Assembly on one day, then the state elections, governorship and State House of Assembly on one day. Now, let's use senatorial as an example. In Nigeria, how many senators does each state have? That's another question. Can I see the answers in the chat box? How many senators does each state have? 3. Awesome. Ekomobong, Moses, Atiba, Eko. 3. All right. So yeah, every state has 3 senators. Now, each state is divided into senatorial zones, yeah, depending on, how it is divided. Like in my state, I'm from Plateau State. We have Plateau North, Plateau Central, and Plateau South. And in most instances, you can see maybe like 5 local governments, 6, 4, depending on how large the state is and how it is. Something in places like Kano, you know that it will be more than that, yeah. So, and Lagos, Kano, no. So, for senatorial elections, how does collation happen? When voting is done at the polling unit level, you gather all the result sheets for that polling unit level, and you take them to the registration area. That's where collation starts for senatorial. But it doesn't stop there because it's senatorial. From the registration area, when you've gathered all the results for polling units and you've put them in one document, you move to the next level. You pack all the results under the registration area, that is wards, for that local government. And then you take it to the local government collation center, where all the results from all the registration areas will now be collated into the local government. And now, depending on the number of local governments under the senatorial district, it could be 5, it could be 10, it could be 11, whatever. You collate, you move to the next level of collation, which is usually the senatorial district collation result center for the senatorial. We're talking about senatorial elections now. For House of Reps, it will be almost like that, but slight difference because House of Reps, less local governments and all. So you take all the results from all the local governments to the senatorial district level collation, and then you collate all the results. And at that point, you declare and return a winner. It's pretty straightforward. I'm sure for most of us, this is basically what we do. Like maybe politicians amongst us or people who have worked in what do you call it? Those who have worked in CSOs that observe elections. I'm sure we've seen this process work over time. So Then that's for senatorial elections. Now let's move on to executive positions. Let's say we are collating for governorship elections. The collation, remember, collation starts at registration area. Yeah. So you go, you collect all the results sheets from polling units, you bring them to the registration area, you collate all of them. From the registration area, you carry the results from different registration area, you get to the local government, and you collect them at the local government. After you've collated all the registration areas under that local government in one result sheet, after that one result sheet, you carry the original from the local government and you go to the state collation. If it's results for governorship elections, that's where you will collate from all the local governments and then you will declare a winner. You will declare and return a winner. That's how we get our governorship, governors elect and all. If it's for presidential election, you do not stop at that state level. When you are done collating all the results under the local government in another result sheet meant for the state collation, you carry the results from the state and then you take it to Abuja. I'm sure all of us watched channels or TVC or whatever in February when collation was done. I don't think there's anyone who did not watch or at least follow the process somehow on social media or on the streets, conversations. It is at that, for presidential elections, it is at that level, at the national level. Collation and declaration of results is done at that level. So you gather all the result sheets from that gotten from the state, that transmit them from the state to the national level. You collate all of them. Then the candidate with the highest votes and who has achieved the constitutional 2/3 majority in 2/3 of states is now declared winner. For what do you call them? For legislative seats, it's just majority. You don't need all that 2/3 to feel 2/3. It's pretty straightforward. But for executive positions, that's when it is not enough that you're getting majority of votes. Like we saw in the Court of Appeal just gave judgment, was it 2 weeks ago? Or was it last week? God, I'm mixing up time. Anyway, I think it was last week, yeah? The Court of Appeal just gave judgment on and laid the matter of, well, it has not laid it because it has to go to the Supreme Court to finally lay it to sleep. But yeah, it's not enough that you get majority of votes cast. You have to also get 2/3 of votes cast. This is basic. It's basic common sense that, okay, if you want to be governor, you have to, get a particular spread across the local governments in your state. And if you want to be president, you have to get a reasonable spread, yeah, across the states in the federation. Now, we've talked about collation for a few minutes now. Just because I'm saying that you carry results from one place to the other, it doesn't mean that everybody that was at the polling unit will keep following the collation officers as they are moving. Yes, they can follow, but they will not, it's not even me, they will not be allowed into the collation centers because there are only a few categories of people that are allowed into collation centers. This is very important because there are situations and in some localities that you see random people trying to get into collation centers. And as persons with electoral and political knowledge and who hope to participate in elections, in governance and all of politics, we need to understand that it is not everyone that is allowed into collation centers. So there are 5 categories of people that can get into collation centers. So one of them, of course, is INEC officials on election duty. I quantified this because it is not every INEC official that can just enter a collation officer, a collation center. You have to be on election duty, and you have to be on election duty in that locality, in that particular place. So it is not any random INEC official that can, get into a collation center, because they can't. They have to be on election duty. Security agents. Also, for security agents, they have to be security agents that are on election duty. They are all given tags. The INEC officials, the security agents, they're all given tags. So it has to be security agents that are on election duty also. Now, the next categories of people that can get into a collation center are candidates or their accredited agents. This is because why accredited agents? Because every candidate, every political party has its agents on an election day. You can't reasonably say candidates can be in all polling units or all collation centers. So that's why agents are important. So it has to be an accredited agent with the accredited agent tag and everything. Then accredited media. INEC accredits media that work on election day. They have tags and they are registered and accredited by INEC. So not every journalist can just randomly enter, a collation center because they can, because, okay, there's freedom of speech. So yeah, let me go in. No, you can't go in. You have to be accredited. Then we also have the last categories of people are accredited observers which can be either domestic or foreign observers. Those are the people that can get into a collation center. So just because you are a CSO person doesn't mean that you can just enter any collation center, because you can. Now, during collation also, there has been instances. I have mentioned result sheets. Now, what I did not say is that this result sheet is usually filled in, it's like a sheet with carbon copies. You know how they make receipts that they have carbon copies? Yeah, that's how the result sheets are. So when you fill, it's, counterfills on a lot of the other pages. So basically, what they do is that it's the first original part that is taken to the different levels of collation. The other sheets are shared to INEC. INEC takes one. Police officers, don't forget, so that when you go for election, and then civil defense or immigration or all the other security agencies that are there for election start fighting over duplicates of result sheets. Remember that it is the only people entitled to result sheets are actually the Nigerian police, then also political party agents that are present. Those are the people entitled to that. And also when the result sheets are filled, it is usually, there's a space for party agents to also sign. But in some instances, not most, but party agents refuse to sign because, okay, maybe to say they do not agree with the results or something, and they may want to use it for election petition. But in such case, the law says that refusal to sign by an agent does not invalidate the result in any way. Now, talking about collation, yeah, I romanticize it, made it look like, oh, it's just such a straightforward process that has no problem at all. Or I don't know why talking about the levels, but like I said earlier on in class, if you do everything right on election day or in the electoral cycle, you pass good laws like we saw with the Electoral Act 2022, you provide enough money for the EMB to buy all the things they need. Procurement was done. You know, you do voter registration, you issue out voters cards, like we saw in between 2022 and 2023. You do all that. In fact, on election day, people are able to vote, people are excited, and then it comes to collation and there are issues. I mean, everything you've done before then will be questioned. I saw people say, why with all the money they gave INEC, they couldn't even give credible elections? And those expressions are valid because, yes, everything done before then can be questioned because of just that simple collation and transmission of results. So, like every other part of the electoral process, collation has its own issues. Yeah, sorry, excuse me. Collation has its own issues, and the issues are multifaceted. It is not just so simple, but I will run through, and most of the time they are interconnected. So I'll just run through them. One of the problems with collation is the electoral personnel. Yeah, probably not well trained, or they want to enrich themselves. They tend to want to do things that they shouldn't do, conduct an electoral malpractice, and then at the end of the day, they cause problems for the whole entire process. We saw some of that in the 2023 elections. We saw some election personnel that weren't well trained also. And then we saw some that indulged in some form of practices. So these are some of the challenges, and these are real challenges. When you go to the field for elections, you see these challenges, and then there are also interference by stakeholders. By stakeholders, I mean, it can be political parties, it can be the candidates, it can also be CSOs, in situations whereby some CSOs are also political, or something. So all this, where there's interference, the stakeholders are not meant to interfere with the process in a way that it affects the process, but sometimes they do, and when they do, it becomes a big challenge. Then the issue of new technology, this is very important because we saw this play out in this year's election. We saw it play out with the Beavers, we saw it play out with the IREV. The technology was new, and there was great expectations, yeah. The way it was sold, yeah, there was great expectations from everyone, from Nigerians, from voters, from politicians, from CSOs, from observers. There was great expectations, yeah. Maybe it was oversold, I cannot say. Or maybe it wasn't just what should have been used. We tend to over-romanticize technology as the ultimate, fix to our elections. But truth is, it may not really be the ultimate fix. There are countries that their elections are basically done by dropping marbles in a drum because of the high level of illiteracy and the fact that they cannot spend so much on elections. That is how they do elections in those countries. And I mean, they are being realistic with themselves. My question usually is, I remember a few years ago, I think 4 years ago, because it was around this time, preparing for Kogi governorship elections, I think. And I had a number of activities in Lokoja. So on one of those days, I was talking to the country director of one of those NGOs that do a lot of election work. We're doing some trainings in collaboration with them. And he said he had worked in Iraq and Egypt for elections. And then he came to Nigeria, and all the workshops, all the discussions on elections was, oh, we need technology, we need technology, we need technology in elections. And then he was like, do we really know what we are talking about? Or like, are we really sure technology is the fix all that we think it is? That because the first time when he worked in Egypt and he worked in, when he worked in Egypt, the first election that they mobilized technology, they encountered a lot of problems. So technology, especially new technology, is very tricky. It's very tricky. And in an election where we have hundreds of thousands of polling units, over 93 million registered voters, it's very tricky. Unleashing a new technology in this kind of large election, it's problematic, and we saw it in the last election. It became problematic. Yeah. One of the challenges too is oversight functions of INEC. I think because of the large distance of elections, we rarely had a problem with the National Assembly and elections, because they basically went well, everything was fine, because those ones are small, it's broken into small constituencies, so it's able to be better managed. Like Kunle Lawal, I think it's Kunle that always says that maybe we should start staggering our presidential elections, do it in parts, bits and pieces. Maybe that's when we can and I think maybe we should think about that, because in such an election with all of that, INEC has how many staff that they can effectively send to the field to actually do oversight functions. So these are some of the problems, and these are real problems that actually affect elections and by extension collation. Yeah, so we need to think about it while preparing for the 2027 elections. Question is, what can we do to make the process better? Can technology fix everything? Do you think technology can fix everything? Well, so in addition, I think my topic has some sort of post-election elements, and I just wanted to add a few things so that when you're talking about collation, you know that after collation, what happens? When I've said maybe like 4 or 5 times, a winner is declared and returned. So when a person is declared and returned, what happens? What do you go? Where do you go from there? Simple. You issue the person a certificate of return. Section 72 of the Electoral Act says that every person, every candidate that is declared and returned as winner in an election shall be issued a certificate of return within 14 days. That is what the law says. So winners are issued certificates of return, and those who did not win head to the electoral tribunals to challenge the election. And that is why I added electoral petitions. Now, petitions are the only way you can challenge election results. That it is the only way. That is what the law says. It is in the law. So those tribunals are not permanent courts. They are set up 30 days before elections, and they open their registries 7 days before the elections. So an election tribunal, once they are done sitting now, like the PEP, it has done its duty, and it is now functions official. It doesn't exist. The only thing it will do now is issue out what do you call them? Notices of appeal, compile the records of appeal and send to the Supreme Court in respect of those who are appealing its judgment. So as we sit now, the Presidential Electoral Petition Tribunal has done its work. So as all the other tribunals, and they are done. They are done. So For presidential elections, the Court of Appeal is the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. From there, you can appeal to the Supreme Court directly. For governorship elections, you have the Governorship Election Tribunal, which is provided by Section 2852 of the Constitution. National Assembly and State Assembly elections can be challenged before the National State Assembly and State House of Assembly election tribunals as provided by Section 2851 of the Constitution. Elections petitions are to be filed 21 days after the date for declaration of results. There is a proviso now, a new amendment to this part of the Constitution. Before 21 days, whether Nigeria is at war or not, once your 21 days passes, it has passed. You're on your own. But now there's a proviso that says where there's a war, act of God and all those things, there's a way the 21 days will be calculated to exclude those days. So I think that is justice, because you can't use time, this technicality, to evade, for people to not get justice, the justice that they need. So I think that's a good one. That constitutional amendment is a good one. A National and State House of Assembly Tribunal consists of a chairman and 4 members. For governorship elections, a chairman and 2 members. All chairmen are members of both tribunals. All chairmen and members of both tribunals are judges of high courts, and I think judges of Sharia courts of appeal too. They are now appointed to as members of the tribunal or chairman. The tribunals shall deliver judgment within 180 days from the date of filing of the petition. We saw it happen, yeah. If you had read the timetable of any of the election tribunals, you see that they made sure that all their, the filing, everything, the pre-case conference, everything, plus the judgment fell within 180 days. Where this does not happen, if that judgment goes on appeal, it will be set aside. Appeals from the election tribunal shall be heard within 60 days from the date it is filed. So the judgment of the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal that was given last week, we have like between now and maybe October. I don't know math. So just calculate 60 days from the date that that tribunal gave its judgment. So you have 60 days from that time when they file, 60 days from the day of where those people file their appeal at the court of the Supreme Court or wherever for it to be heard. And then the Court of Appeal is the final court for appeals emanating from the National and State House of Assembly election tribunals, while the Supreme Court is the final court for governorship and presidential elections. Basically, that is it. So I added ADR in election dispute resolution. So basically, election dispute resolution has to do with all the processes of resolving electoral disputes, either pre-election cases or the election petitions. All of this in political science parlance, they are referred to election dispute resolution. So ADR basically is alternative dispute resolution. And it basically is the process where you use alternative means of resolving disputes instead of the court to resolve disputes in any instance. So INEC provides services, ADR services, where political parties and other political stakeholders can resolve disputes through ADR, but it has not been used for election petitions because the law does not allow that yet. So it is as simple as that. The law does not allow for election petitions for ADR to be used to resolve them. So basically, that is it. So I think I ran through all my slides, and at this moment, I will ask that we open the floor for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ma, for that class. That was insightful. So please, if you have questions, you can indicate by raising your hands up or dropping your questions in the chat box.
No questions? Wow. No one wants to ask a question. Okay. It's one of two things. I either taught very well or you didn't understand anything.
Okay, we have hands raised. You have asked you to unmute and ask your question.
Graduate of Kogi State University.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me. Thank you very much to the presenter. It was a very, very engaging class and very enlightening for me. Okay, so I have two questions, or even more than that, but let me ask two questions. The first one is for this last PEP tribunal we had. After the outcome, so some people were of the opinion that the opposition parties, that's the people that were appealing, they didn't engage it well, especially with regards to that point where we found out that the BVAS was not compulsory. It wasn't compulsory to transmit the results electronically. So what I just want is for you to just give your own review. How do you think, are there things they should have done better? Because I also hear that for them to have gotten a good case at that tribunal, they should have recollated, computed a lot of results from sample polling units. And some people argue that there was not enough time to do that, given the 180 days and all of that. So that's my first question. If you can do a quick review of what could have been done by the opposition or the appealing parties. Then my second question would be, just out of curiosity, for INEC as a body and the other 36 electoral management bodies. So whenever we don't have, I know election is every 4 years, when we don't have elections, administratively, are they usually busy? Are they usually engaged? What do they do from day to day? Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for your brilliant question. First of all, that first question, I cannot answer it because I am bound by, I am involved in that process. So it is not something I can answer. But what I can say is this, generally, a person saying an election wasn't done properly cannot compute the election results. That's the work of INEC and whosoever INEC appointed on that day to do it. And they've done it. The only thing they can do to help their case is apply for those documents from INEC, certified true copies, and place it before the tribunal. Now, I cannot say whether the petitioners did that or did not do that, or maybe they did and the tribunal felt it wasn't enough. Maybe that is what happened, but I cannot answer that question because it will mean delving into areas that I am not allowed by my involvement in the case to answer. Now, the second question. Remember we talked about electoral cycle, and there were a whole lot of activities under the electoral cycle. We talked about reviewing the elections. We talked about reviewing laws, the legal framework. We talked about training, retraining. We talked about all those things. After elections, all these things happen because when you start reviewing and amending laws and doing all that, these are processes that actually take years, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or even more. They even take, sometimes it takes more than 4 years. So at the time the next election comes, you may still be doing some of these things. So yes, administratively, they are always busy. They are always busy reviewing the elections they've done. In the case of INEC, their election timetable is no longer every 4 years. As we are talking now, INEC is preparing for Kogi, Imo, and Bayelsa governorship elections. By next year, INEC will be preparing for, I think, what they call it, Edo, Edo and Ondo. And the year after, we're talking about Anambra and one other state. So INEC is constantly, doing elections these days. And then all the reviews and all, so it's not just, they don't just sit down and wait for the next election to come before they start. They start preparing for the next election immediately after this election. That's how it is done. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe your question was answered.
Hopefully.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it was. I don't know if I can ask the other question I have.
What other question?
Okay, so the other question is, so a lot of people have talked about online or technology. I think someone talked about using online to do elections. Apart from the clause we have in the Constitution that we have to use permanent voters card, permanent PVCs. Aside from that, let's assume the Constitution allowed us to engage technology as much as without restrictions. I don't know, is there somewhere else in the world or something? Is it possible to do elections online? And secondly, I don't know why Nigeria's election management body, that's INEC, is centered so much around one particular person. It's not like that in other developed democracies. I mean, it's just like a body. We don't just know a name, like we know this particular person heading. We know the last time was his name? Is it Jegao? So why is it? I don't know if you can shed more light to that. Thank you.
Your first question was
online elections.
Online elections. See, the thing is, most countries actually do some sort of hybrid election, manual / a little bit of technology. That's what most countries do. So the manual will now serve as a backup where the online or the electronic voting fails, or has an issue, or it is being contested. So you now use the manual to confirm the electronic. That's what most countries do. And I think that's what Nigerians should be clamoring for, that, okay, even if we want to include technology, let's do electronic voting. You vote online, maybe print out some sort of slip and you drop it or something. I think Kaduna tried to do something like that for their local government elections. I think that may help. But to go online, I don't even know if Nigerians will trust INEC to do that in the first place. So, and I don't even know if it will be effective, truthfully, with the level of illiteracy we have, the level of the way our terrain is. I would advise, if we want to do anything like that, it should be some sort of hybrid system. Then about the EMB, how it is structured, it is what the law provides for. It is how our laws, are structured. It is structured. It is what the law says. The law says there shall be a body, the Independent National Electoral Commission, which shall conduct elections into one, the president's office of the president and vice president, two, governorship and deputy governor, National Assembly, and then National Assembly, that's Senate and House of Reps and all that. That is how our law is structured. If you remember from the beginning, I said that election is a legal process, and it is what the law says that happens. So you cannot say, oh, okay, let's decentralize our elections the way the US does. The law does not allow it. Yeah. The law says there shall be a chairman of the commission who will be supported by 12 national commissioners, 2 from each zones. That's what the law says. And then you have resident electoral commissioners who represent INEC at state levels. So first things first, we need to ask, what kind of democracy do we want to practice? Secondly, are we ripe for that kind of American democracy where states voting is mostly, overseen by the states? Do you really want to leave voting in the hands of some of these governors? Do you really want to do that? I don't think so. At least that will be the answer for most people. I don't think a lot of Nigerians would trust. So I think for our level of development at this time, I think it's the best process. Yeah, we just need to vote. We just need to keep appointing credible people and then, following the process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ma. I believe your question was answered now. Okay, so Atiba, I've asked you to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thanks for your time and thanks for the lecture. First, I'll put this way.
I can't hear you, please.
I said, good afternoon. I said, how possible is it for INEC to redeem its image in a situation whereby a member or a worker of that institution are communicating with the database of a ward to another ward during election?
Honestly, Charlie, did you hear what he said? If you can repeat it for me.
Okay, I think he's trying to ask how possible they will have the full database of the wards of all ward members.
I said, how can INEC redeem its image in a situation whereby, or remain objective, whereby a staff transfers the database, that is the registration of new voters, from a ward to suit another political candidate from another party? Because in a state, it happened during 2019 election. It also repeats itself during 2023 also election. But
honestly, I can't hear you. If maybe it's Charlie, I would say what you said.
Okay, you can actually type your question, because I also didn't get you clear. I think you were asking how INEC can redeem their image, right?
I think I got that part.
In a situation whereby a staff of that institution collect money from a politician, a contestant, to change a word database, to transfer it to another place against its opponent.
Okay, from what I heard, you're saying that let me repeat, how does INEC redeem its image in a situation where a staff of INEC changes the database of a ward?
Yes,
transfers it.
Yes.
I don't know if that is possible.
It is possible. It happened in a state that I don't want to mention. It takes a lot of conversation.
Maybe what happened was, INEC conducted and decentralized some polling units. And in that process, in the process of doing that, a lot of polling units had to be relocated to other places. This was done as far back as 2021. So for a lot of people didn't find out that their polling units had been changed until on election day, even though INEC had given locations and asked that people should cross-check and all that. So maybe that is what you mean by that. If it is that, then it was a legally done process. Relocation of polling units was done by INEC itself. I don't think any INEC staff has the powers or the ability to change a whole ward, move it from one place to another. That's not possible. The whole world means like over 10 polling units in most instances.
It happened, and the matter was later when we called the attention of the rep to order. When we noticed that, then it had to call the person to order, and they checked, and it was verified. But the person was not penalized; it was handled in-house. That is one. Another thing, how is it possible for the returning officers, the professors, coming with their result sheet, being painted, shaded? Because these two questions I have, it happened in the state, in the southwest, and the rep officer said because he doesn't want most of the professors to go to prison because they've doctored it due to maybe they collect money from the two leading parties to just make sure they strike the balance. And when they did the calculations, the figures are not accurate. They have to let it slide. Then that because some persons and this book, they've reached out, they've seen the results, and that also issue led to the run at a place at a senatorial district in one of the southwestern states in the last election, not this 2023, 2019 election. How can they cope all these things? That's my question.
In instances like that, there has been instances where professors have been prosecuted by INEC, where they tampered with results and all that. They've been prosecuted by INEC. So where INEC finds out that such a process or such an event has happened, I think the problem is a lot of times INEC is one body. All of us Nigerians, all of us, we need to step up and shed light on these issues. Yeah. I don't know what you people did in that regard, but if INEC's attention was called and you followed up, most times people stop at the state and say, okay, yeah, we are done. You need to follow up, write petitions, write letters, follow up, report to the police, go a step forward so that when nothing happens, then you can actually say, okay, INEC is being complicit in the whole process. Yeah. But INEC has persecuted people before because of things like this. There's a professor that is in prison at the moment. So just because he's a professor doesn't mean he's above the law. Where they break the law, they pay for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Atiba, I believe your question was answered. Okay, FM Bello, I've asked you to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah. Hello, good evening. I'm joining you here from Ibadan. I don't know if you can hear me.
Hi, Bello. Yes, I can hear you.
So I have two questions actually. It's been very interactive.
Thank you.
And given the complexity surrounding the issue of politicians or political actors potentially engaging in actions that disrupts the peace and security of particular regions during election periods, could you provide like a detailed analysis of instances or patterns where such actors have been accused or suspected of involvement in activities that disrupt the normal functioning of these areas during election? And is there any compelling evidence or documented instances suggesting that these actions are strategically designed to hinder or manipulate the electoral process, and which consequently discourage voters from exercising their democratic rights, particularly in regions where they anticipate unfavorable electoral outcomes? So I don't know if you understand my question.
You want me to write a whole PhD thesis on your question?
No. But I don't know if you understand. If you don't understand, I can shed more light.
I think I sort of understand your question. Let me
Okay,
try.
you know that. Yes,
Basically,
let me
you're
just.
asking. Basically, you're asking if there are instances where the actions of political actors has hindered people from voting, and if anything was done about it. Is that what you asked? Can you hear me? Hello, Bello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I think his network.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but your network is a little bit.
It's your
somehow
network
shaky.
actually.
Yes.
Everyone can hear me.
Okay.
What I was saying is, your
Okay.
question is
Yes,
that,
it's clear now.
okay.
Yes.
The question is that,
Yes.
are there instances where the activities of political actors have hindered
Yes.
people from voting? And how was that handled by INEC?
Yes.
Oh boy. Okay. Let me give the smart answer and try to avoid answering it, because this is a very tricky question. Because of where I work, I cannot give my personal opinion or give an opinion about it. But this is what I will say. Yeah?
Yeah.
Generally, elections.
Yes.
An activity where people go out to vote, yeah? You vote for a candidate of your choice and all that.
Yeah.
Security are usually on ground on election days. And I'm not saying that, now this is the issue. I'm not saying that security have every area covered, because that would be a lie. I mean, most of us have worked in the field. That would be a lie. But as much as possible, security is deployed. And there are instances where we have seen either on the media or, or either on the traditional media or on social media, where some people have been stopped from voting in some places. INEC has not till date, sorry, NEPA has done what they do best. INEC has not, at least to the best of my knowledge so far, talked about this. They haven't. Probably because election tribunals are still sitting. It will be detrimental to start talking about these things. It may overheat the polity and all that, yeah? But in the process of review, these are some of the things that INEC takes into consideration. That is why there is a security, intersecurity consultative committee on INEC, where INEC, there are different committees, the police, the army, the other arms of the armed forces, civil defense, immigration. This committee basically states to see how they can improve election security. So why INEC may not come out right to say, okay, we've seen these things, if it's that they definitely are seeing it. And they will now work with all those security agencies to make sure that in the next electoral cycle, such things do not happen again. Because as much as it is, Nigeria is the way it is unlawful to stop people from voting. No matter how, even if they are not voting the candidate of your choice, it is unlawful. The law does not allow it. Every citizen has one vote. which they are allowed to cast on election day, irrespective of where they are staying, as long as they are registered voters. So yes, why INEC has not come out right to talk about those situations that arose during the 2023 general elections, it would definitely handle it through its own administrative processes and the inter-security agencies and committees. Committee, definitely. I hope I've been able to at least answer your questions more.
Sorry, I had your answer, but I have another question, please. Yes, from a law enforcement standpoint, can you elaborate on instances or challenges? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So can you elaborate from a law enforcement perspective where law enforcement agencies have failed to effectively address or mitigate the issues of insecurity during electoral periods? You understand?
Yes.
Because this is, yes. You made mention of law enforcement stepping in and taking action. But still, there are instances, if you could remember, there was a time that some roads were even blocked and electoral materials couldn't even pass. So if electoral materials didn't even pass and get to where it's supposed to get, voting will not even take place there. And even the security agencies will not access the place. So please, can you elaborate on that?
Now, you see, the thing with elections, because of how what's the word I'm using? Elections are very tricky. Yeah. You want to put, you want people to be secured so that they can vote. But at the same time, you do not want to unleash so many. Imagine if you are in a polling unit and you see a bunch of soldiers with guns just hanging around, and people will feel uncomfortable voting in such a situation. So we also need to realize, we also need to take into consideration that Nigeria is the way it is. First of all, we have a full-blown insurgency in the Northeast. And most of our security operatives are there. We cannot, because of elections, pull all of them and send them to the field. We have a little over 500,000 police officers, and over 50% of those numbers are attached to VIPs. And in most instances, they are not withdrawn before elections. So the number of security agencies in the field, they are not even many as we think they are. So imagine 37 states. Let's say for a presidential election, we have 37 states, that's plus the FCT. Then you have over 170,000 polling units. You have an equally outrageous number of registration areas. Then we have 774 local governments. There is no way, even if we unleash the full force of the Nigerian armed forces, the Nigerian police, there will not be enough to effectively monitor these places. So it all comes down to what kind of elections do we want? Do we want to keep being policed and tossed around by security agencies, or will allow democracy to be practiced the way democracy should be practiced? I do not think any country unleashes the number of security agents we unleash on election day. I do not think so. So the problem is more of a Nigerian situation, our problem, the way we handle politics, than anything else at all, really. And because I'm not a security operative, I cannot really answer some of these questions from their own perspective. But from mine, this is how I see it. Thank you. I think Bello has gone upset.
Okay, he's still on the call.
Oh, okay.
Okay, question was answered.
Yeah.
Okay. Tap that. I've asked you to unmute. You can go ahead.
Good evening, Ma.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you for a perfect presentation.
Thank you.
I want to comment concerning this presidential tribunal committee that has been set up after election. I don't know, maybe if through INEC guidelines, can they be able to do the tribunal before the swearing in so that it will not be causing a lot of hope and a lot of uncertainty on individuals and other political affiliation parties concerning it? That is just what I want to get clearance of. If maybe INEC can assist Nigeria to do the tribunal before the swearing in, because all those things, I think they facilitate a little bit corruption in the system as it is, to my little knowledge concerning that. Thank you very much. Hello?
Chima, did you get the question?
Hello, Ma, did you get my question?
Okay, we can't hear her. Seems she's having network issues.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you now.
Yes, we can hear you, Ma.
Okay. I said in this situation, I think INEC by itself will also want a situation whereby all cases are put to rest before inauguration. But that is not what the law says. And the work of changing the law rests with the National Assembly.
Okay.
It is as simple as INEC does not change laws. All INEC does is implement the laws made by the National Assembly. So if Nigerians want a situation whereby all electoral tribunal cases are put to rest before inauguration, approach the members of your representing you at the National Assembly. Mobilize, take it to them, tell them this is what you want. I mean, they are our representatives. If that is what is best for us, then that is where we should channel our grievances. And I agree. In other countries, like in Kenya, I think the presidential electoral petition is the Supreme Court. It's only the Supreme Court. And they were, within less than a month, they were done with the presidential election petition.
Exactly.
So if we want that, then we need to change our laws. And who changes the law? The National Assembly. And they are our representatives. So we will need to work with them to do that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Okay,
yes, Yusuf.
Okay, hi.
Yeah, hello, good evening. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you to all the participants for making out time. I just want to comment, not a question, based on what the last person talked about or asked. I think it's not in the hands of INEC, anything that has judicial adjudication. INEC, what is in the hands of INEC is just the processes and the conduction of the election. Once it is done, and it announces whoever, as far as it is concerned, based on their documents and their collation results, whoever emerged, they return him elected, their work has ended there. Any other person that has any issue regarding whether collation or whatever, just let me speak like Professor Mahmoud, he says, go to court. And the rest is in the hands of the judiciary. And INEC is very, very respectful and obedient of the judiciary. If today the judiciary asks INEC, collect this person's certificate of return and issue another person, that's what INEC will do, except if there is another appeal from a higher court. So that's just the position. So in clear terms, all that INEC needs to do is to conduct the election, declare somebody returned elected, and any other thing you have, you go to the judiciary. That's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
we have some questions in the chat box. Shall I just read them all, then you answer, or I read one, then you answer?
Tracy, we can read one by one.
Okay, ma.
So that I don't forget.
Okay, ma. From Shitu, he says, please, ma, who are the key players in the tribunal courts in the case of inclusive results?
Huh?
Who are the key players in the tribunal courts in the case of
imputing results? Okay, I cannot hear you, Chalia, anymore. Okay, I can hear you now.
Who are the key players in the tribunal courts in the case of inclusive results?
Man, I do not understand that question, because inclusive results, the key players at the tribunal are the petitioners, their lawyers, the respondents, their lawyers, and then the judges themselves. Those are the key players at the tribunal. And when it comes to presenting evidence before the tribunals, the various tribunals, the lawyers do that on behalf of the petitioners and the respondents. And depending on what evidence, the evidence can be sourced either from INEC or wherever it is. But any evidence coming before the tribunal must be certified by the body in which they went to get it. So I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, I have one more question here.
Okay.
Why is it no one has held responsible for disruption of electioneering process? For instance, as Lagos, where electorates were denied access to polling units and also some were assaulted.
Well, I wouldn't know what INEC is thinking, but I know that for a fact that INEC has a list of people it is planning to prosecute for various electoral offenses. So it's possible that the Lagos and wherever it is, where electoral offenses actually happen, may be on the list. I can't answer that question because
I mean, I'll let me help.
Okay, thank you.
Let me help you. And you know, the electoral college had the privilege of helping oversee conjunction with the EU and CBID, helping oversee Lagos elections. Of the entire polling units in Lagos, I'm not sure of the number, between 9,000 and 11,000 polling units. The issues with polling units were 362. There were cases, to that particular, that people were stopped from exercising their franchise. Not exactly stopped. Yes, there were attempts. I'm aware of situations in Surulere. I'm aware also of some within the Amod of the polling units. And these were dealt with almost immediately. Yes, videos came out, but police were also sent, or the response team were sent to those particular areas almost.
And the videos came out before the responses.
Yes, of course. So it's not like it kept continuing. So I need to clearly state this. In the history of Lagos elections, out of the entire polling units, at 362 polling units with issues, is a Guinness Book of Records trust me, in INEC's history. So I didn't want this to come from Amina, because I'm happy it came from me, because we're privileged to monitor that particular elections in conjunction with the EU, that's the European Union, and CJID. I know that this particular topic, and I'd like to clear this clearly for this cohort, this particular topic is full of a lot of emotion. And I'd like to state this clearly. The Electoral College does not do emotion. We're not aligned to anyone. We also do not handle emotion. There are facts on ground which is what we deal with. We do not have the facts to clearly tell you we do not have the facts. So thank you, everyone. And of course, Amina, it's always a privilege to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kunle.
Thank you very that answer. Thank you very much, Amina, for the great class. We really enjoyed it. At least our questions were answered and our doubts were cleared.
Thank you so much.
Unmute and tell her thank you for the class.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you for the class. Thank you. Thank you. I'm very grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much. We're grateful.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you
listening.
very, very much. Thank you, Amina.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Edie. Okay, Didi, Lisa, we are ready for you.
Oh, okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. Okay, she has left the call, but I trust it's been a very insightful class. Well done to everyone who stayed till the end. And I trust you've gotten your assignments for the week. The campaigns, the debates, and the elections are holding this week. So please, let's all get to work. So thank you all, and good evening. And good evening, Edie. Good to have you.
Great to be here, DD. And of course, thank you for 12. And we look forward to seeing you all guys work during the week. So I wish you all the best, and cheers, everyone.
Maureen, please end the class. You have the host function. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Maureen, are you there? Please end the class. Thank you.